Why salt? Because Jesus knew how useful salt was. In Jesus' day, salt was useful in 4 ways. They cleansed newborn babies by rubbing them with salt. They flavored food like we do with salt. They preserved meat. They didn't have refrigerators, ice boxes, none of that. And in Jesus' day, 3 to 4 uses for salt. Do you know that according to the saltinstitute.org, which I didn't even realize existed until this week, today we know scientifically that there are over 14,000 documented uses for salt. Do you think that Jesus chose salt on purpose? Absolutely. Do you think that the Son of the living God, through whom all things were made and by whom all things were made and nothing was made that has been made that had not been made through him, knew just how useful salt was? Of course! That's why you're not basil. You're salt. Because you have a use in the hand of God if you're in Christ. Now, the plurality of use. 14,000 uses. Your use is not my use is not your use, but we all have a use. We all have a place. We all have a part to play. That means you have a gift to give. 1 Corinthians 7:7 says it. Each person has a special gift from God. One kind or another. Your gift does not have to be mine and mine does not have to be yours. And no, the best church gifts are not the ones on the stage in church on Sunday morning. They're the people who go out into the world and live for Christ. Sometimes they're not even seen, and they're doing the work of the ministry right where they are. Ephesians 4:7 says, He, God the Father, has given us each one a special gift, through the generosity of Christ. We're all different, and you're different by design to be used with the gifts that God has imparted into you. And like the Incredibles, we're gifted in different ways. So some of us are strong and natural leaders like Mr. Incredible. Some of us are flexible, go-with-it people like Elastic Girl. Some of us are small, but we're fast, like Dash. And some of us are protective by nature, like Violet. And then there's a couple of you got gifts coming out of your ears. You're like Jack. You got all kinds of gifts, right? Gotta wait till the end of the movie to figure that out. And some of us have great beards. I'm sorry, I'm a narcissist. I'm sorry, just get that out there. You don't have to have the same gift as the person next to you. He says, what if salt loses its taste? How can it be restored? What does Jesus mean by this? Well, in his day, the salt that they had was not from the container in the cabinet. They didn't have refineries. The salt that they had came from the shores of the Dead Sea, and it was a white dust mixed with sodium chloride, mixed with sodium. But because sodium is one of the most soluble, water-soluble substances, you could actually end up with the dust with the salt washed out, but it still looked like salt. He says, if that happens, what does he say? It's good for nothing. Usefulness. No, Jesus is not saying if you lose your saltiness, you lose your salvation. No. He's saying, don't lose your sense of purpose. Don't lose the knowledge that you know that you are on this earth by divine design, by a God who has created you. He has fearfully and wonderfully made you, and he has assigned you a purpose and a place in what he is doing in the world. Don't lose that. Can I say to some of you, don't let failure rob you from your sense of purpose in Christ. Because some of you beat yourselves up over the mistakes that you've made since you became a Christian. You have no problem with the mistakes that you made when you were not a Christian, because after all, you were not a Christian, but then you became a Christian and you still made mistakes. And some of you made big time mistakes as a Christian and you beat yourself up. You beat yourself up about all the things that you did that make you unworthy to be used by God. Don't do it. You still got a use. If you got breath, you got use. I think this is why the scriptures spend so much time talking about Simon Peter in the Gospels, because if there's anybody who knew how to fail, it was him. Always opening his mouth and inserting his foot. Oh, Jesus, I know the answer. And Jesus was like, no, wrong again. And one time Jesus had to say to Peter, get behind me, Satan. How many know you're having a bad day following Jesus when he calls you Satan? And then in the most epic failure of Christian history, I don't know the man. I don't know the man. I don't know the man. And then the tears. And when Jesus rises from the dead 3 days later, do you know what he does? He gives the angel a message for his disciples. In Mark chapter 16, he tells the angel to tell the women who are coming to the tomb, who don't yet know that he's risen, make sure you tell my disciples and Peter, I will see them again in Galilee. Why the and Peter? Because he knew that Peter was beating himself up over his failures, and he didn't want his failures to be the final word over his life. And the same is true for you. You will blow it. You will make mistakes, but don't let that be defining. You still have a use if you've got breath in your lungs.